Okay, so here's the situation at the end of my second game of the play of the Hougomont scenario, the kind of like introductory scenario. You can see that I've already set up for the second scenario, at least for the Anglo-Allied, for d'Erlon's attack. This portion of the map will not really be included in that. And so I called this on the 16th turn of the possible 20 turns, because after that there's only one die roll that really would have made any difference in the game, which would have been another shock assault attempt by this stack into there. That would have been their third, I think, possibly fourth, and they have a 1/3 chance of retreating these units out of here and moving in, which would have won them the scenario occupation of Hougomont itself. That dollar didn't turn out, so we could consider it. I've completed the whole 20 turns. There would have been some firing, but at this stage, sort of desultory firing from either side, which would not have. We finished on morale of, I calculated to the end, if the losses would have continued pretty much as they were going, which had got a bit lighter towards this point. The French would have finished on 23 morale points and the Anglo-Allied on 12. So neither a draw there. And what happened? Well, it was quite interesting. So this is the last brigade. So there was an extra brigade was committed by the French. They just left one behind in the end. That one came up here. Perhaps it should have committed these two. If they had committed themselves early, they might have been able to swing around here and sweep through these King's German Legion skirmishers and hit the Guards units here. These Guards units really saved the day, but then in that case the Brits would probably have committed an extra unit of theirs, and those commitments at that late wouldn't have made a change in the demoralisation, but the attacks and shock attacks and hence losses might feasibly have brought the Brits down to a demoralisation, in which case a win for the French, but that attack would have had to gone off earlier in the day. And at this point I was still trying to really just to work out if it's possible to take Hougomont. Essentially what happened was the French did their sort of push here, but then the Anglo-Allied have two batteries here. They brought up KGL there with one, another battery there. The French actually managed to take these squares and come up to the line here, but and caused quite a few losses to the KGL, but ultimately retreated because in the ensuing artillery duel it just wasn't worth the losses to their formed battalions. So that's the game turn marker. So they left a skirmisher company holding out there. This artillery unit had been uncrewed for at least an hour, 4 game turns. So essentially they drew back from that, and having gained the orchard here and the walled garden, they just kept pushing skirmisher units through, trying to attempt a shock attack from this hex side. This one, and this one, and that one are impossible. There's only 2 are possible for shock attack, and they just kept attempting to do that, just kept routing. Skirmishers can immediately recover from rout as long as they're not within 1 hex or 2 hexes of an artillery unit. And so they would reform, get sent back in, take some losses as they from fire as they're moving in, give out some losses as they were firing, and try it again. The French belatedly brought in a battalion there. It took quite a while to sort of bring them round, and then they're disrupted. They had to undisrupt them in this hex before moving them up. So they were getting some more firepower, gradually, as you can see, depleting. The stack hoping to get better odds for this. In fact, that's the point. Oh yeah, but it's still on a -2, so still at 50. Still on combat results. So even if at 2-1, they're at -2 because the defenders are holding. You see, that's 50% chance of the defender routing. No, 4-6 chance. And that would in fact have been the last roll. So I mean, we could feasibly just make that roll on camera now. And what do we get? A 1, which means, hang on though. So DR1 is a rout result for the attacker, and then D1 is just -1 point for the defender. So again, that wouldn't have worked. They would have lost another, and they would have routed, and then it would have been another half hour or so while they unroute, get moved back up. And meanwhile, the French obviously taking losses. Now, if we had rolled, yeah, so 50% chance of routing the Anglo-Allied out of there. So it was slim. The French had a decent chance. They were just, I guess, unlucky because they had a passage up to here quite early on in the game. Well, maybe from about the 10th turn. And here we had MacDonald with 2 guards units in line that were basically trying to move into here, but they would become disrupted as they crossed the hedge line, and then sent back by these. They kept trying to come back in. So it was a very seesaw battle between these form battalions and all the skirmishers around there. French moving up some form battalions here, but automatically disrupted in this obstructing terrain, so they weren't really going to make quick headway against the bunch of skirmishers there. Given them a couple more hours, they would have cleared through here and maybe be able to clear those out and eventually take Hougomont, but they just didn't have the time. So the lesson learnt for that is, for this scenario, is to activate 1 battalion, send out all your skirmishers, activate another of these battalions, send out skirmishers, and just take the whole of here as soon as possible. Then you only really need to activate 3rd battalion there if the British are threatening this flank, and the 4th one is just, I still think you don't need it. It's not, it can only send out 1 skirmisher unit each, so it's not even that useful for skirmishers. So I think on the 3rd play of this, the French would have a decent chance to take it, but then the Brits would probably, they would drop these down to unformed skirmisher units and cause a lot of delaying action. The question then would be, how do they use the artillery? The artillery just aren't much use in here, not being able to get the range or line of sight. So effectively leave this side of that battlefield quiet and have that skirmisher feeding in action here. I suppose the point with this second battalion is, if you also send that brigade, if you send that up early, it could come around here, threaten the reserve area there, and then they wouldn't be able to break down so many skirmishers to bring in here, and this would remain committed. Oh, I made a mistake. I actually uncommitted that, and the Anglo-Allied aren't allowed to uncommit any units. So that, yeah, effectively that brigade would swing around here. So yeah, I mean, maybe the French have to commit everyone. Send a brigade here to engage the King's German Legion, another brigade to threaten around the flank, a brigade here to threaten around the flank, engage them, which then just leaves that skirmisher action. Again, it would still be a doubtful outcome, but I think the French would have a chance. So that's the end of the Hougomont scenario, and I'm looking forward to this bigger scenario. So this will be out of the action, although in fact scenario lists some skirmishers as being deployed. For example, these skirmishers are included in this scenario just because they're on the map that you use for that scenario. So I brought them forward here. Historically that wouldn't really happen because they're busy defending there. Similarly, there's some skirmishers here which in this scenario I can then bring forward because this action is not taking place. So a bit strange, but anyway, I will detail this action in another video and try and improve my lighting. Yeah, okay, I'll leave it at that for now.